what can the average citizen of India do? Should we become more compassionate towards people who are downtrodden? Should we try and I guess the answers to that, there shouldn't be any question whether we should be nicer to them. We ought to be. But are we doing it? And is that fostering more enmities in the state and creating more of these problems? Is something that I'd like to ask you. Do you think that our citizens have more to do?
Okay, there's a school of thought that thinks that it's bad governance alone that creates it. But there have been many instances when even if you provide them with everything, there's still this element.
Okay.
Today, terrorism has...
Just cussed nature of man?
No, terrorism is now motivated at different levels.
Okay.
The world is now going through a particular period, and of where they're, one is awareness. People have become more aware of their rights. So the people who demand their rights, they are entitled to ask for rights. People who feel marginalized in a society, they want something more. They see others enjoying it. The minority wants more. This is all acceptable in a society.
Yes.
It's bound to rumble. But the point is, when they take to arms and then they create this kind of confusion, and then it leads to a lot of
panic
violence, then it in turn that fuels, and finally it bursts out sometimes in the form of terrorism. As we've seen that happening in neighboring states also.
Yes.
Now, what can we do? Well, for a start, for a person like me, the first thing we can do is stop saying that he's a freedom fighter.
Okay, just put that phrase to sleep.
Sleep. The second thing is we have to become aware as an individual. Since you asked me, we're not here on what a state can do. We're not here.
We're just talking.
Okay.
Citizen.
What can an individual do as far as terrorism? Basically, I think it's very important for an individual to be aware.
Okay.
Aware that this is going to stay. Terrorism is here to stay. You can only counter it. You cannot anymore uproot it.
You can't forestall it. You can't
you
anticipate it.
Forestalling and anticipation. You know what they said about what IRA said to Margaret Thatcher when she escaped from the Brighton bombing. They said, we have to be lucky once. You have to be lucky every time.
Oh, that's
true. Point is that kind of violence you cannot. Of course, intelligence forces, every time they counter, we don't hear about it. The one time they make a mistake, it goes everywhere. Then it's called a failure of intelligence.
Do you think media is also playing a part in whipping up, not passions, but misrepresenting the efforts of the state?
No, there is a lot of misinformation about terrorism. There's sometimes when I'm watching these things, I'm appalled at what people say, because there's so much of misinformation people have. People think certain ways, then people think it's justified. I mean, terrorism is never justified. That kind of violence is never. There's difference between a person demanding his right. I may want a particular right, but that does not justify me chopping off the head of a man who already has that right.
Okay.
That does not justify it.
Right.
He may have that right. Chopping his head off is not going to get me my right. I have to ensure that I get my right. So that's a very...
But isn't this all evolving from the same problem? That they don't seem to be able to get what they want. They don't get justice in the courts or justice in the government. So then that drives them to say, okay, let me go kill a few people out of sheer frustration. Is that why it happens? Or do they have a plan when they do these things?
That is a common understanding that people have, that terrorism comes, that if you have good governance, terrorism will disappear. If you're economically better, terrorism will disappear. If that is so, why was there terrorism in European countries? If you don't have justice, you have terrorism. Then why do we have it in this country? We have a robust judiciary. We have so many ways of addressing issues. We have a democracy. We have a democratic movement. People are so aware. You have a voting system here, an electoral system which has worked for the last 60 years.
Or is it that terrorism speeds up the whole process? Otherwise you go through courts and fight, legal battles. Here you just go kill some 440 people in the market. Next day the government changes the law straight away and it's okay, let's not argue with this.
No, I don't think any government so far has really, except for one very dark incident in Indian history when we made the mistake of succumbing to terrorists who, of course, we let them go. The famous Kandahar incident, which was a deplorable action taken.
But did they kill anyone? We just exchanged prisoners.
Yes, but then later on, they were the ones who went and
yes, and they ended up doing more and more acts of violence.
More and more. So governance, political establishment as a rule does not like to negotiate with terrorists. basically, I myself feel you should not negotiate with them.
Okay, one thing that worries all of us in India, our friendly neighbor, who's friendly when he chooses to be friendly, they are perceived as being constantly aiding and abetting acts of terror in this country.
Yes.
Is that in your interactions with them? I'm sure you have international
yes,
fora. You've
with
met
all
plenty
of
of
them.
Pakistanis
Yes,
out there.
of course.
And they must be saying, you guys hate us and we hate you, and all that nonsense that goes on. But are they being tackled the way they ought to, or are we still just letting things ride? I mean, the nation really gets worried. I mean, they do whenever they feel like do whatever they want. Don't we have a strategy against terrorism sponsored from that side?
Yes, I think we've now on a different situation, because now through the US, tremendous amount of pressure has been put on Pakistan regarding this matter. But let me just talk about something here. State-sponsored terrorism, that's what we call it. Yes.
Yeah.
As far as that is concerned, that is a totally different issue, and we have been victims of state-sponsored terrorism. Definitely, we've faced it for a very long time. I think we've had to deal with it, and the international community has always appreciated the way and has been, kind of taken lessons from the way
we have handled
from the way India has handled.
Okay.
Cross-border terrorism.
All right, so if you haven't been able to actually stop it, you seem to suggest that whatever we have done is appreciated and encouraged, and maybe...
I wouldn't say appreciated and encouraged, but I think lessons have been learned by other countries from the way we have handled it. And it has been a long road. It's been a very difficult road, and there have been several setbacks in it. But I think India today, especially in the way we are today as a regional power in this region, emerged, whatever. But the way
they're giving out the right signals to people around us.
I would say the balanced way in which India has handled it is definitely far, because this could have escalated and gone into a situation which would have been irreversible. We never allowed it to reach there.
That's true. Yeah, so folks, you've heard it from the lawyer who specialized in this, that it's a long, hard battle ahead. We have not licked it, but they're actively thinking about it, and hopefully this will be a thing of the past, and we'll be rid of terrorism. I don't know if that'll happen. Terrorists, at least. Terrorism might still survive. So thanks, Geeta.
Thank you so much, Madhav. It was a pleasure.